Well, what will have brought leaders' minds very much into focus when it comes to Ukraine is what's happened there over the past few days. And emergency workers have found more bodies buried under the rubble of that residential building in Kyiv that was partially destroyed during the Russian airstrikes on Monday. It brings the number of dead across Ukraine to 43, most of them in the capital. Let's go live to Kyiv. We can speak to the BBC's James Waterhouse, who is there. James, just explain to us where you are and what is happening there.
Yeah, we're in one of those districts that you mentioned in Kyiv, which was also hit in that large-scale missile attack on Monday. Behind me was the point of impact where 14 people were killed, including 5 children. And it's a sight as a team we have seen time after time. You have the crater, you have the whole chunk of a block blown away by the force of the impact. There are shattered windows all around, and you can see exposed apartments where people's lives were once lived. And all the while, state-run newspapers across the border in Russia are calling for even more missile strikes on Ukrainian cities. So while the country's president is in Washington, D.C., we are seeing, a political strategy by Ukraine. They are almost showcasing scenes like this to try and secure security guarantees in the long term or more military support. But at the moment, we're seeing quite a ferocious recovery effort as they lift twisted metal and debris away to find who might be left.
James, is it quite a difficult line for President Zelensky when he attends these big international summits? Because President Biden has just promised more air defence systems. He has to be grateful for that, and yet they need more in Ukraine.
They do, and when you say more, Lucy, if you're looking about what Zelensky really wants, what Ukraine really wants, is NATO membership. They want to be part of the alliance, to have all of the benefits, and they would ideally like all 32 members to send their troops to Ukraine and help them fight this war against Russia. But that's not going to happen. It's partly why Vladimir Putin launched his full-scale invasion, embarked on a decade of aggression towards Ukraine, but equally the West has been unable to curb that Russian aggression. So I think, to be honest, with President Zelensky in Washington, there is a kind of cap on his expectations. He will look for more security guarantees. Dozens of bilateral agreements are being signed. You're right, he has secured more air defences, but that is as good as it's going to get for now for Ukraine. It's looking to get enough to survive Russia's invasion, and only if Ukraine survives it can it embark on those long-term goals of longer security guarantees, more alliances behind it, and perhaps NATO or EU membership. But I think the words of his foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, are curious. He talked about working with the US rather than NATO. That tells you everything you need to know about where Ukraine is looking to get help in the near term.
That picture of devastation behind you, James, but if we could step back for a moment, what is happening in the rest of the country? What is happening on the front line?
So you have this kind of, it's a state of constant, really. We talked a lot, didn't we, about this major cross-border incursion by Russia back in May, where the delay to US help, ammunition, armoured vehicles and tanks and the like, the delays to that kind of aid allowed Russia to really try to capitalise. And so they launched a major cross-border incursion in the northeastern Kharkiv region. Ukraine has stabilised that front line to a degree because of having permission to use Western missiles on targets, some targets inside Russia. But otherwise, it's a kind of status quo which doesn't go Ukraine's way. You've got towns like Chasiv Yar on the eastern front in the Donetsk region, reduced to rubble as the Russians inch closer, continue to envelop what's left of a city, but it is a city reduced to ruin and almost completely deserted. The Russians can clearly sustain the losses they are, which the Ukrainians cannot. They are the smaller dog in this fight, in this war of attrition. So that is where we are now, and that is why you are seeing Ukraine in a political overdrive to both get the immediate help it needs, but also keep the calls for negotiations at bay. But to give you an idea of how far both sides are from peace, you have Vladimir Putin launching the missile strike of this nature at the start of a week. And then you have President Zelensky in response saying sometimes you want to kill him. That's an extraordinary words to be uttered by a world leader, but this is a world leader whose country is on the receiving end still of a full-scale invasion after a very long feeling 2.5 years for millions of people here.
Yeah, remarkable words, James. Thanks so much for joining us from Kyiv there. We're going to take you live to Washington shortly as well to bring you right up to date with what is on the agenda of the NATO summit, those calls from President Zelensky for more military aid. But